In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful. In honor of the presence of the original, unconditional being and system admin of this conditional existence. In the presence of the conditional created reality, this moment finds itself. In the presence of the moment of moments, what is the value, the true value of this event that we are all attending? There are various approaches to reality. You start off in your own sector of meaning. And as you live days on this planet, you begin to see that there is always more to what is going on than we have access. It is a system that the human species has made known, but much of it remains unknown. And so what could it mean when a human being speaks about the presence of the moment of moments? What does it mean, the moment of moments? What I have noticed is that a majority of human beings treat reality as one fixed context, and they identify as a concept in that context, and their lives are like concept hopping. Okay? But the moment of moments is a suggestion that for one moment, ask yourself, what is the context to the context of the concept you are? So this ability to be able to discriminate things as if having a conceptual position and a contextual position. The concept, an example would be the self. The self is the concept. The world is its context, even though to the self is another concept. You know, these past, let's say, I don't know, few days, my approach to reality has shifted. And I've realized the moment I forget there is a bigger truth, I am limited. This world can be seen Alright guys, I'm gonna bring a oh my god. Pen, find me. Okay, I found some. Alright. Alright guys, to be honest, what's funny is I wanted to speak about anger, but I felt speaking about the moment of moments. But I will share the insights I've recently gained about my own self. And I'm actually proud of myself being able to realize some, how do I say it in this? O system admin, my lord, help me find the right words and rhythm in this moment. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. In the presence of the moment of moments, what is our actual context? And so, right now on a piece of paper, I am drawing 3 concentric circles. First circle is the concept of self. Second circle is the context of self. Or think of it this way. There is the concept, there is the context to that context, and then there is the context of the context. In this world, there is hierarchy, there is spectrum, there are many variations to the same form, and there are endless views that reality can be accessed. So what it means is that the concept of self is the first universe, the first world. Yeah. The world is the second world. The context of the self is the second world of the self. And the third, what is beyond the world, is the third world. So think of it this way. These are realities of access based on range. Okay, right now, let's look at it through a sense of scale. Okay, so what is the scale of one human being? It's just like the experience of one moment. Okay, what is the scale of the cosmos? Unfathomable. What is the scale of the world this self finds itself in? So in other words, it's the acknowledgement of being through different levels, okay? In one way, so think of it this way, you're one being, but you're being in multiple ways, okay? Or you're one moment and you have different ways of access to that moment, okay? So what are we looking at? Okay, so we're looking at a physical self, okay, in a physical world, and the access of this physical self to the physical world is non-physical. So physical selves are non-physically accessing physical worlds. And if we identify with a non-physical self, for example, the idea of you. See, if somebody tells me, who are you? I can say, I'm this body. I'm just this physical body right here, man. It's like, don't ask any more questions, you know. You know, I'm just this physical form. You know, this mechanism of the biological organism. Do you know? But then, if you ask me, what else are you? Or if you ask me again, who are you? I can give you a different answer. I will say, I am this very unique idea of a person that landed the moment I was physically born. It's this brain of mine started to, in some sense, try to respond to instability, do you know, by stabilizing itself in accordance to the information it had access to. So you can see me as just my body, or you can see me as the character in the story that I have been so far. Okay, so every human being here has a subjective self. We're not living, okay, like animals in nature. We are living in a more cyborg fashion, and cyborg is it's a sci-fi term. A cyborg means half human, half robot. Okay? And we human beings right now, we're not half human, half robot. We're half human, half ideology. Do you understand? This is why I keep saying it's not about being responsible in the outer realms. There are ways you can look behind your eyes that you haven't looked before. There are ways you can be aware of the moment where its presence is where it's happening, not the personality. In other words, what you're seeing, do you think these words are the origin, or is there something happening before I speak? And where is that happening? And I've pinpointed it. It's happening in the inner realms. A sort of invisible overlaid room upon reality. Do you know? And the experience I have my inner realms is it's very funny because, I've had different theories on this. Okay, my inner realms isn't happening. If I close my eyes, then it's very different. But if my eyes are open and I'm talking to you, I am seeing the inner realms in front of me. What I'm seeing is happening in front of me. If I tell you to visualize an apple, if your eyes are closed, that's different. But if I tell you open your eyes and visualize an apple, you don't visualize the apple in the same spot you are. You visualize it a distance in front of you. I'm trying to say that the moment of moments is suggesting that human beings are this kind of like, think of it as, okay, in reality, this is what's going on. There's an unknown world, this giant circle. Then inside this giant circle comes an unknown self. And then this unknown self knows itself and then finds a known world. So, ladies and gentlemen, everything we human beings know about reality is simulated. Now, the deeper question is existence simulated? So we know we are simulating experience in existence. Okay, that's what meaning is, right? So if your life is meaningful right now, it's arising from you. That meaning is coming from within you, but that meaning is being given to all the forms and structures and shapes you see outside of you. For example, right now, I'm looking at this sign. It says visitor parking. It's outside of my car window. I'm just looking at it, okay? Now that sign means nothing. It's just being there. It's an object. It is my ability. It is from me that when I see that sign, it's a sign. There's a giant P on it, with a green circle around it. There's the letters of the words, visitor parking. Do you know? So what does that mean? That thing doesn't have meaning. It is my attention that gives it a meaning in my experience. Okay, and so the question is, what are you inputting before you've noticed before you've noticed what's there? Human beings are responsible for just one sense of self. That's how they teach you. But in reality, there is four corners. Okay? And I mentioned them. There is the unknown world. There is the known world. There is the unknown self. There is the unknown world. There's the unknown self, and then there's the known self. So think about it this way. All of humanity so far is responsible for 1/4 of its actual presence of the moment of moments. Okay, so human beings are being responsible for their known selves. Okay, and let's say you just don't want to live in your own world and just live for yourself, and you care not just for 3 generations of your grandkids, but you care for the world your grandkids to the power of infinity will be living in. So right now, we're trying to get the species like, yo, you guys, be responsible for how you're knowing yourselves and check out if it's accurate or not. Okay, then be responsible for how you're knowing the world. Check if it's accurate or not. Do you know? And then, this is really for those people who become spiritual, because spiritual people are those who have noticed the unknown self. Religious people, I consider religion now Not before 2003, I didn't. But now I consider religion is far superior because it is telling you, are you ready, O unknown soul, to be responsible for your position in this unknown world? Okay, so in I'm gonna tell you guys, somebody has to say it. You're not just a known self. You're an unknown self too. Do you know? And if you're not responsible for the unknown, how would I say it? Your knowledge can enslave you. And it's so fascinating. We human beings have desires, but we don't wonder about, like, what other desires could exist, what other ways reality, you know, can be given the meaning. Because what is a desire? It's self-meaning. All human beings are in the process of self-meaning, In actuality, it's like, ever since I saw it this way, this life has become smoother for me. The moment I saw myself as a specific known self, when somebody would come and say something, I'd be like, and even though it's still there, I mean, some habits die hard, but the whole point of it is the human being is trying to live a life consciously. If it can't be responsible for its consciousness, it will be pushed into reaction, right? And the known self is the simulation of the unknown self, and the known world is the simulation of the unknown world. And so I think it's more honest to consider ourselves as unknown beings in an unknown place that's being. That is way more honest than me being like, yeah, guys, in this moment the thought occurred that I'm this, so I'm this. Somebody asked me in that moment, I'm that. You know what I mean? Right? So it's very strange, because the conscious experience of life is like non-fictional form and fictional meaning. The known self is the fiction, but we tend to make it real. And so imagine if you were in one room of a house, one room of let's say a gigantic, colossal mansion, the size of the cosmos. You were in one room of this mansion, and that's the thing. Then that one room, if you believe that one room is the whole mansion, or the whole, like, I don't know, White House or something, do you know what I mean? Like, if you think that's the whole building, right, then in some sense there is a flaw. Your limited access has denied you of your more limitless access, of your greater access. And that's the whole point, folks. How are you holding yourself in the moment? How are you experiencing your own existence? And it gets deeper, because how are you objectively maintaining yourself, which is survival, but how are you subjectively activating this body? And it needs purpose. We have minds for a reason. There's a reason we can notice things that haven't happened yet. There's a reason somebody can notice, yo, man, that thing's gonna, like, that branch of that tree's gonna break, if I step on it. Like, we can envision. We have, what it is? We don't know the future, but we can probabilize the future, and that's better than nothing. So, in the presence of the moment of moments implies that your known life in this known world, which is simulated by your consciousness, is actually simultaneously happening where an unknown being is living an unknown life. An unknown being is living an unknown life in an unknown world. All right? So, I think it's very important To me, it is the unknown, and even if you're a religious person, there's a certain jurisdiction, because after some point, who says that reality needs to be humanized? Who says that we have to fit all the rooms of the mansion into one room in the mansion? It doesn't even make sense. And so humanity is functioning, is basing its decisions on simulated views. So knowledge is simulated meaning over, a form that we did not simulate. So think of it this way. You are creating something over something that is created, but what created it is unknown. And so it's strange, because the human ego is like, I can figure it out, I can understand everything, I can know it all, I can be the best, only to realize, no, there was another power in the room. And so to me as a being, the unconditional power is way mightier than conditional power. What religion is the account of an unconditional being, an absolute being. That means that being does not exist in a condition to adjust to the condition. Conditions adjust to this unconditional moment of being. Okay? So how fascinated are you by the unknown presence of it all? And how seriously do you take the known self in the known world? I don't know. Yesterday I gave a, heavy talk on, okay, let's say negative, like how to avoid a sort of negative moment. I pretty much shared, like, if one person does something nice to someone else, that person doesn't reciprocate it. And if that person who did that nice thing expected that person to reciprocate, then very easily they will give themselves a permission to kind of become like, destructive in that moment, right? Because human beings are functioning under the known self in the known world, therefore you have known expectations of how the known world should behave. When those known expectations aren't met, in some sense, you're pushed into an unknown self, and that is uncomfortable, people, so they fight back to become their known self, Do you know what this means? I'm pretty much saying you have a known life and you have an unknown life right now. There's a way you're alive that you don't know, and there's a way you're alive that you do know. And I'm saying that the way you're alive that you do know should not limit what actually is that unknown life. And my, I guess my understanding so far of it is that it is impossible. I shouldn't say impossible. It is incomprehensible. What does that mean, guys? To be human. All of us right now that are being human. It's a unique behavioral, it's a unique existential language. Do you understand? To be humanoid even is it can be seen as a sort of form. A universal. Not a universal, but yeah, I can say the humanoid art, like, form can be a universal. So right now, okay, how do you, if somebody asked me, what's up, guys? Welcome to the chat. Hey guys, you're listening to a Muslim futurist talking about the nature of reality and how the system admin beyond the world room has provided users with an ability to engage reality. Do you know? There is a very interesting view in some traditions that the soul can be one's enemy. Okay, they have that view, like it's termed that way, but what they mean is that yourself can be an enemy, and yourself, your limited self, is called the nafs, the ego. Okay, And the whole point of religion is, at least Islam, is to submit your limited self and realize everything is in conduct of the limitless self. But it is not your limitless self. The biggest thing for me that is inspiring me to really talk about this stuff, guys, is that it's just noticing that it's like a person just goes through the checklist, reality check. Did I create the world? No. Did I create myself? No. I just logged into this. Every morning I wake up, I log into this conscious waking state, and I understand, similar to how you go to work, you are entering a space with its own rules of order. I don't know if people know this, but there's rules of order and there's rules of chaos. Do you know? But the rule of chaos has one rule: devour. That's chaotic energy. Do you know? When I see chaotic energy, I know that on some level you can either fight that energy or you can reroute it. You know, I'm learning to reroute rather than destroy. And the biggest thing, guys, if you're somebody, I'm telling you, I mean, this past few days, there's been moments where I've gotten angry. And I'm telling you, I've made an observation that is so profound. A person becomes angry, evil, or cruel, and all of this because they forget what is in the room. Do you understand? You forget the priority of the moment. And this is unlike how everybody's been conditioned. Do you know? Think of it this way. Would you rather have a conversation with one of my talks? Like, imagine I'm talking, right? It's like, let's say you go listen to one of my talks, right? If you have a conversation with me there, like, let's say I say hi everyone and you're like, hello, you know, video, do you know? It's like the real essence is not there. And so, is it really far-fetched that we are beings in search of our real essence? And so there's so many traditions, you know. I'm somebody who's, you know, being raised in Canada gave me an ability to access various forms of archetypes, do you know? And I can tell you that and I will say this even forget that, like, if you go back in history, you will see that the way they classified the nature of beings was that there was human nature and there was divine nature. Do you know? This is very important. Every being has a divine, and not every being, humans who have specific system admin privileges that the creator of this realm positioned them, at least through the Islamic lens, as a Khalifa, as an ambassador of the divine names, of the higher qualities of that higher reality. Do you know? And that higher reality is not known here through a set of a limited perspective here. You know, what I'm trying to tell you folks is this, okay? You can go and talk to someone, you can go and talk to, how do I explain it? Let's say I see someone, person A sees person B behaves in a certain way in that moment, and person A assumes that just because person B, this unknown being in front of me, displayed this archetype of themselves, that they are that archetype. And the answer is, our impressions of others are not them. They are just our impressions. And in the same way, your impressions on whether reality or divinity, do you understand? They are impressions, but what is the actuality? That means, do you want to talk, like, again, it's like talking to a photograph of someone or going and talking to the actual person. Do you know? And the actual person is in a dimensional access so different. That means when you go and talk to a real person, it is so different that, I mean, nobody talks to portraits. I mean, maybe there's some people who, you know, grieve and they talk to portraits, you know, but I am telling you, are you here to access the personality of life or the presence of life. And the presence of life is beyond the human idea. Therefore, if there's, as Terence McKenna would say from the psychedelic universe, there's another tenant in the room. And through various, theologies, especially monotheism, what it's saying is that, if God wasn't created, can't be created or destroyed, it cannot be reduced to an entity. It is beyond the conditions that lead to the definition of entities. We are all conditional beings in a conditional world. God is the unconditional. So the moment of all moments is unconditional. All moments, though, within that moment are conditional. In other words, in Islam it also says, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, which means all praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Plural. Worlds. There's an S at the end. So in other words, if there is multiple worlds but one singular truth of a God, we are in the simulation. Okay? And we human beings are simulated beings here. Okay? And I'm telling you that at least this is my approach to my life. Commanded by an unconditional moment to be a conditional moment, all that I seek, more important than all the things I can accumulate in this world, is fulfilling how my soul was commanded into existence. In Islam, there's a view, if a Buddhist, like if a yogi goes and asks, I mentioned this in any talks, if a yogi goes and asks, like a Himalayan yogi, or a Vedic yogi, goes and asks from the Vedic perspective, goes and asks, hey man, I've lived like trillions of years. I've had trillions of past lives. I've been every famous person in the past. How about you, Muslim guy? Do you have a past? Do you believe in past lives? And the only thing that Muslim can say is that before souls entered the womb, they were in Alam al-Arwa, the world of souls. And in that world of souls, all souls had a rank. And souls of the same rank know each other. They are familiar with each other here. And souls of a different rank are not. And sometimes souls are positioned in moments that they outrank. And sometimes souls are positioned in moments where they're underranked for. Now, the most important thing is, how is that rank justified? The most important realization. The only way out of this simulation is by the system admin's mercy. It is not like you go and press a passcode and it happens. This world is in the jurisdiction of an unconditional power that has already seen it happen. That means God is not limited to like being a being in the present and then what is the future? I don't know. What destiny means, an unconditional being already knows all the conditions. That's what it means. It's happened. My life has already happened, but not to me, to the higher power. That means to God, all of our lives have already happened. Everything is done. Just like a novel written where the characters in that novel suddenly are like, whoa, who wrote this? To me, I feel that it's an absolute being. God did not create man like Lego. He didn't take time step by step by step. An absolute being commanded it into existence. So God commands man into existence, imbues him of his essence, and then commands man to say the divine names in front of all manifestation, all the conditions in reality. And when man does, and you know what the greatest clue is? We performed. And now you look at this modern time, what are human beings doing? Your lifetime is a performance. But in the presence of what? And if you figure that out, well done. But it's not something you can contain. That means that's the brilliance of power. If a person wants to be kind to a form, that's conditional. But if you want, like you go and do, like, you go and help that form. But if a person wants to be kind to a force, that means the consciousness is not embodied yet. It's just a force. I don't want to use the word wisp, but it's a force. It's like a wind. That means there's many winds of souls around, but they're not formed. So what is kindness to a force? A being that is identifying as a force, not a form. It is release. Because just pretty much what is going on? Unknown life force, moving known life form. Known life form, if it wants to be respectful or kind to either itself or its own unknown life force, is that you free it. That means one of the most advanced abilities that a human being can have is to release their moment from themselves, from their self. So many people feel enslaved, but how many moments are you enslaving? How many rooms of buildings are you hiding in and you haven't seen the whole building? My life, as I'm getting older and older, as the days pass by, it's becoming more clear to me that it's an unconditional moment. This is the conditional effect. The cause is unconditional. In other words, if there is an unconditional cause to, if we are caused, it's an unconditional force. Unfathomable. You know, I'm going to say a few things. Today, I was at a stop sign. I drove to the stop sign, okay? Like this four-angled stop sign. Intersection. Not an intersection of a main street, but side street. And there was one person that, like, me and this other person get to at the same time get to, what do you call it? We get to the intersection, okay? But there's two cars back to back, on the left side, and I wait for the first car to go. The second car doesn't wait for the stop sign. The guy shouts at me and shows the middle finger when it was like my way to go, okay? And all I did was like this circular hand motion of like, buddy, something's off in your mind, But it was I don't know, it was one of those things, and it made suddenly there was, I don't know how to say it, an anger arose in me, okay? But then I realized somebody in the chat section says, why am I looking at Earth? Because you are beyond it. So guys, in that moment I was angry, and the anger was about to it felt close to like losing myself. And then I got this realization. It's not my business. It's none of my business. If somebody gets angry, even it's them. It's not me. They pull me into their reality. So that's the thing people don't realize. The lower order processes of this realm, even way lower ordered than us, okay? They don't have the ability to be aware of what they're ignorant of. They assume it's true. And of course, I'm not saying like, I'm not saying like, yo man, it's a delusional place with delusional beings and delusional actions, delusional conclusions. No, it's not like that. But I'm just saying, after living 12,000, I think it's like 12,500, but after living 12,500 days on this planet, I'm starting to understand that I am treating my whole being physically. And some non-physical moments, you don't need to think you got to do something. You just release the moment. Do you know? And and religious people, not just Muslims, any person who believes in a higher power, what are they doing? Why are they, let's say, I'm not talking about all religious people, because people are different, you know, but I'm saying majority of religious people, to me, okay, not the ones that think they know better than God and are interpreting the text as an absolute, you know. I believe there is revelation, but I don't believe that human beings properly understand that revelation. That's the issue, you know. So when religion enters politics, or when it's like, you know, somebody's acting religious to, in some sense, like push something, I know that people have nafs. People have egos. It's all about instability. People feel uncertain and they use their own energy to stabilize their moment. Okay, but because there's a fear of trying to see more than yourself, you know, you keep it, the brain is used to repeating familiar patterns. You know, it's like going to a coffee shop and sitting in the same place, which I do, you know, but how do I say it? It's like experience all the other tables if you're going to that coffee shop that much, you know, see all the different angles of it. And that's what I'm telling you. Before you are so convinced that you see the correct thing and you got to go do that, you know, I'm not saying doubt yourself always, you know, I'm just saying that there are moments where something happens in front of us and we have a choice to personalize it or impersonalize it. And I'm realizing a lot of the moments I experience throughout the day don't need to be personal. Even if it's personal, even if somebody comes and says something, do you know what I mean? Like, I'll maintain my boundary, but I will break that person because they're trying to break me. That's what I'm learning. Do you know? We reroute instead of destroy until we figure out what kind of beings we actually are. You know, so all the unknown selves in this unknown world who are knowing themselves temporarily in a known way, in a known world, you know, relax your inner realms. Because it's not that an idea can possess a person can possess an idea. What does that mean? You can possess an idea until it can, or let me say it differently. It's more, the significance is more on, let's say, the idea possessing it. So in my mind at that intersection, the first thought was, yo, this guy did something wrong. But now what I noticed, realized afterwards was that, okay, none of my business that being doing something wrong, and I kind of saw that person as a, like, I kind of understood, really. I think I'm getting closer to understanding, really, I'm not married, I don't have kids, but I'm starting to understand, like, parenthood, right? That, yo, man, there are kids playing. It doesn't matter if they're in an 80-year-old body, 70-year-old body, 50-year-old body. It doesn't matter, It's like at some point you just see that beings in their own world. Let them be until they have an ability to see beyond their world, or reroute them so they can see more than what they thought was absolute. Many people, I think, don't comprehend religion properly. They in some sense say, why do I need to worship something? Interesting question, but not accurate question. It's not about worshiping something. It's about you are a moment that has attention. Wherever your attention is, that's what you're accessing. And religion is saying something so profound. And before I even say that, I'll say this. It's like saying, if you want to manage your past, if you want to, if you want to be responsible for your past, you need to be responsible in the present. If you want to be responsible for your present, you need to be responsible for the future. If you want to be responsible for the future, you need to be responsible for the next world. I'm saying not responsible. That means bring it into your awareness to realize, okay, like for this happened to me in some way, in the sense that the moment I decided to give 10,000 talks in 2014, I was like, yo, man, Like if it's 10,000, then one talk should be like, you should be able to give a talk anytime the ideas arise. You know? I notice people in the chat section talking about, a flat earth, guys, you know, I'll tell you this. Yeah, I believe it's flat and round. I believe we live in a circle, okay? We live in a 2D circle. Everybody relax and leave my chat alone. Man. Okay. Let's go back to it. So anyways, where I was going with this is just sharing, honestly, I'm just sharing my observations, okay? And I am telling you that this notion of living for the future to maintain your present, I want to now give you parallels to this, that it's like when you live for an unconditional power, your conditional power gets managed. Okay? So if your attention is not on, so when I use the word worship means where attention is. So you're either worshiping yourself, worshiping the world, worshiping an idea, worshiping, it's like where are you? Do you know? And so the whole point of it is the consideration of the presence. How does my attention notice the presence? Right? In the chat section, somebody says Christians and Muslims believe our earth is not round, it's flat. I don't know where that's been said. Okay, but I will tell you that in the Holy Quran, there, if I remember correctly, there was a passage, there was a pointer to how at the end of days the sky cracks. Okay, but this doesn't mean it's flat, yo. And let me tell you something even more next level. While you're too busy thinking the world is flat and round, it's a simulation. Have you ever thought about it? What if it's a simulation? What if this world that you think the shapes are so real is not, the shapes are distracting you from what is actually going on? An unconditional presence of being. Welcome to the chat section, guys, by the way, and thanks for engaging, But I always appreciate, if the comments are more on the topic, right? I'm talking about the presence of the moment of moments. We're talking about the context to all contexts and manifestation. And I'm making the claim. I'm not making the claim. I'm saying that it's in some sense same thing. I'm saying that it's an unconditional context that is keeping a conditional context where that conditional context is keeping a conditional concept. So for me, this might sound like this is what I'm telling you guys. If you live for the not next world, but you live for that which is beyond, in the same way a person who wants to be responsible in the present, they are living for their future. You need to care about your future if you want to handle your present. Right? So in the same way, if we want to handle our future, so think of it this way. If I'm in the present, I have to, from the present, think about, okay, what is my future presence going to be? How am I going to exist on this planet? Or how am I going to experience this planet? Yeah, guys, it's a fine simulation, this world. But there is something original within us. The original command of the system admin. The system admin is not a shape. And I believe even in Christianity, now this can get very deep. I talked about it in another lecture, but you have God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, and God the Father. Everything arises from God the Father. At least if you're Christian. I don't know, guys. I haven't been raised Christian, but I kind of try to understand it. Okay? I was not even raised like, that is Islamically or something. I wasn't like, I don't know Arabic. I had to, I was called towards religion in a way that is very different than others. I started from shirk. I was actually, anyways, I was not, I had associated partners to the unconditional. I had made the unconditional equal to the conditional, subconsciously not realizing it. Okay, now I don't make the unconditional equal to conditional. So everybody, like, you don't know how many people have come to me and they're like, yo, man, I believe we're all God. And I'm like, no. You're all God sent, but all God created, but not, you're not all God. You cannot make outside of the box equal to inside the box and think that's right. You know, what's outside of the box is not equal to the box. God the Father's presence is different than God the Son. Now, of course, in Christianity, I think even though there is a trio. Now, this is very complex. Maybe Christians can help me out here, like how your experience of it is. Okay, but to me, God the Son and God the Holy Spirit are arose from God the Father. Do you know? Because the God the Son, before God the Son existed, there was God the Father. Before the Holy Spirit and before the Holy Spirit entered Maryam, peace upon her, there was the God the Father, right? So before these positions became conscious, so first there was God the Father, then there was God the Holy Spirit, then there was God the Holy Spirit engaging with Maryam, and then there was God the Son. Right? Am I saying this correctly, guys? Now, what I came to understand, Muslims tend to think that Christians worship Christ. Do you know? And I was doing some research on ChatGPT, and I'm like, okay, they actually worshiping Christ, or are they worshiping Christ's divine nature? Do you know? And that changes it. Do you know? That means it's very different than worshiping a person from worshiping the divine nature of the moment within all. Right? That's something else, right? But at the same time, I got to keep making this point. And many people disagree with me to the point that I'm starting to feel maybe I don't have an accurate view on this, but I feel I'm on point. So I'm gonna defend this view, not defend it, but I'm gonna like, this is the way I'm choosing to walk internally in this moment. That all of us are not God, because if the definition of that original truth before even any condition existed to define it, you know, okay. So, all right, guys, let me gather my perspectives here. Let me reinvent the wheel. So, an unconditional power creates the conditionals. The conditionals, that's what we should call ourselves. That's a term I'm going to use in my sci-fi, The conditionals arrived in the world that was conditional too. Okay, so the access to the divine nature means that that being is not just their human nature. Now, if Christ had a human, if Christ had if a person has a divine nature, and we all have a divine nature, that kind of wouldn't make sense, because then we're all Christ. Or maybe through the divine nature of that. Or no, guys, I'm confusing myself. Okay, I think this is time to move on to a different topic. Pretty much, I was just making the point that there's an unconditional, think of all of us being inside a box, okay? Now, Muslims are saying truth is outside of the box, nothing in the box can equal truth. You know, some spiritual people are saying, yo, the whole box is the truth, do you know? And Christians, they are saying Christ, a person in the room, inside the room, was the being outside of the room that created the whole room. Okay? Now, from the human perspective, I cannot see God the Son as the God the Father. Do you know? I cannot see what's in the room equal to what's outside of the room. But the only way this is accessible, this view, is only not from human perspective, from God's point of view. From God's point of view, God is an absolute being, can do anything. God can go and be anyone, right? But from the human perspective, from this side of the coin, do you know? In some sense, what is beyond the room can't be limited to the room. Do you know? Again, in the same way that seeing one person in one room of a house doesn't mean actually you can see the owner of the house in one room, but the owner is not the whole house. Anyways, guys, I'm going off topic. You know, I need to interview some Christian theologians before I can really more deeply talk about Christianity. You know, but I was just sharing about the differences in regards to one view being unconditional cannot equal the conditional, and then from one view, the Christian view, unconditional being equals a specific conditional being, right? Anyways, the whole point of it is we're in the presence of the unconditional. We're all in the presence of God the Father. You know, I think everybody, like, you know, agrees to that. Even though Muslims can't call it God a father. God is not humanizable. Okay? But in Christianity, you have a human access to divine, the divine nature, or the divine, right? And, yeah. So going back to the topic, in the presence of the moment of moments, I'm pretty much saying you're a known self in a known world, but actually the known world is your simulated meaning over it. It's an unknown world. Therefore, if it's an unknown world, you are actually an unknown self. So think of it this way. Everything you see about yourself is the tip of the iceberg. Even if somebody comes and says, yo man, you know, I said this argument to my father who believes in past lives, you know, but I don't anymore, do you know? But I set this argument, you know. My twin brother and my father, they both believe in past lives. Their views are similar to some people in the chat section, you know. They they say, like, okay, in my past life, you know, like they have a certain, my father is different than my brother, but even their views on reality are actually different. But I'm telling you that they have a view that we have existed before this existence, do you know, on this planet, okay? And, you know, they're like, yo, in my past life I was Che Guevara, in my past life I was this and that, right? And I'm like, yeah, and when it came my turn, right, I told them it's very difficult for me to see a past life when my experience of myself right now is the tip of the iceberg. What? I'm seeing past lives to the tip of the iceberg? That makes no sense. So life is more fascinating to me to go see what the whole iceberg is. What is the true presence? What's actually present here? Do you know? And I've reached that point where I've realized everything that we have done is conditions. It's conditional. So to me, The moment of moments is that unconditional moment. And through religion, it's kind of like there was an original state, then there was a simulated state, and all those beings in that simulated state can anytime, any moment notice the original state. The original state isn't created or destroyed. It can't go anywhere. Do you know? It's only the simulated state that experiences the shift, right? So what it means is original state generated commanded a simulated state. Simulated state is also commanded to return to the original state, right? So pretty much this is what I'm saying. It's like as a Muslim, everything started unconditionally, then conditions arise, then everything would return to the original unconditional. Okay? Now, if somebody says, and guys, feel free to have counter arguments to me, you know, but just be respectful and politeful, you know? Polite. Is politeful a word? I don't know. Such politefulness. Politeness, yeah. Politefulness. So that means it doesn't exist. Yeah, politeful isn't a word. But we create it, you know. You heard it here, guys. Politeful, you know. Somebody said it. Think of it this way. If God is beyond conditions, the path to God is also beyond conditions. If Jesus is a conditional entity, and if you worship the human nature of Jesus, I think it's very different than worshiping the divine nature of Jesus. But as a Muslim, I consider all prophets as advanced beings that was near the system admin. They were closer to the original reality than us, you know? And many people don't know this, you know. I'm very thankful, actually grateful for religion, because the moment divinity entered the room, divinity and revelation, that's when magic became obsolete. Destiny is way more powerful than any sort of manipulation. Destiny, the power of aligning to what's already happened. Not to us it hasn't happened, but to that unconditional being, the conditions are all simultaneously existing. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful and the most advanced. The purpose of this episode was to make you wonder about the unknown and wonder about how it's more unknown than known. So what strategy should we come up with, in some sense, to know the unknown? And it's hilarious because the unknown is beyond the humanized. You only are left in a station of faith. That means the higher order processes of this moment's room, of the world room, they are conscious of how it's been done. So if an unconditional being, okay, let me say it this way. Treat the archangels as moderators, see humans as users, and see the system admin, see God as the system admin. Okay, the system admin is uncreated, the angels are created from light, human beings are created from clay. The users are, and this is, you know, we don't know what that really means, but, you know, and so so imagine a user, okay, is getting more insight about how the mods are living and begins to realize the mods are functioning in a space where the system admin already knows the difference between an angel and man. An angel cannot go against divine will, but human beings are being tested if they go against it or not. Divine will doesn't mean something a human being can explain to you. It means the alignment of your presence with the original moment, the original earth, the original world, the original self. The original self is not God. Our original selves is not God. It's more like in Alam al-Arwah than God. In the world of, in the realm of souls. Before this life and perhaps after. But afterwards, it seems like it's a positional directive. Because as someone talking about advanced civilizations, perhaps potentially, one of the people who's talked the most about it in modern times, I couldn't ignore the fact that what is heaven then? And heaven seemed to be a divine civilization. And a divine civilization is where these beings that pass the test of the conditional reality have unconditional access. Where the definitions of heaven in Islam are like rivers of milk, and gardens, and back in the day when people were in the desert being melting, you know what I mean? Like it was a significance there. Okay, and so what the significance of the idea of heaven is that it's an unconditional civilization. It's a civilization that is reaching the point of absolute result. So if you want something, you suddenly get it there. But here, if you want something, there's so many conditions, the layers and layers of conditions, and you don't even know at the end of those conditions if the system admin wills it for you to get it or not. A person can spend, like, there's a very beautiful verse and saying, and I think this is in many religions, in Islam, that says what is meant for you cannot miss you, and what is meant to avoid you cannot catch you. Something in these lines, right? That means that as you become more aware from a conditional oblivious, a conditional more reactive unconscious entity, as you become more responsible, you begin to see. You become, like, out of all the species on Earth, dear viewers, tell me which species, even secular, tell me which species has the greatest capability of noticing a higher order process. It's us. Anyways, thank you for listening. In the presence of the moment of moments, may the moment of moments guide us all. The moment of moments is the absolute unconditional original being before any conditions needed to define it. Or not that needed to define it, before we limit the unconditional to the conditional. Anyways, thank you for listening. Have a great day, guys. Appreciate it.